Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, I hope you're having a fantastic day and an even better week. We have some variance in weather this summer, extreme heat in the south, crazy weird cool offs in the north, and I don't know, figure it out, right? It's the weather. The weather's weird right now. Who can figure it out? But anyway, I hope your weather is treating you well. Anyway, just the same. Well, folks, today, something I'm going to talk about, and it's really trading success, right? Doubling down on brokenness to achieve success. And what do I mean by that? Well, you could draw up a scenario where we could, as we often do, we jump in at the organizational level. Imagine at the organizational level, you're struggling, your key performance indicators are struggling. And rather than taking a healthy approach to look at your team and your organization and how everything flows, your value stream, essentially, instead of looking at that, getting to the heart, really the heart of the matter, what you do is you double down, right? You become really a dictator in chief, and you start to ratchet down. You start to be abrupt. You're less connected and more because you feel that your reaction is because we performed poorly, that I'm not being hard enough, right? And if you grew up in an era where you were raised by people who conditioned you that way, that I'm not being hard enough, right? Now, direct, forthright, absolutely. Hard enough, that goes into the narcissist category, right? That's essentially, being oppressive, being abusive. You're not really coaching your team, and it's not a we scenario. It's all about me, all about I, and what I'm talking about. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that it's not about you as a leader in this example, right? Think of it like a runner. They lose a race. So instead of getting going to the heart of the matter, getting more rest, eating properly, right? Preparing better, practicing more, whatever. What do? They get all ticked off, right? It's the spoiled child syndrome, right? They get ticked off at their teammates. We'll say it's a relay where it's a team element, right? Rather than improving their own performance and looking at what can they contribute, and then how can they bring the team together and then help them and build a bridge and find out, ways that I can help my teammates out too, right? It's like, oh, I know my teammates struggling in this area. I'll work with them, right? It's instead of going to the heart of those matters, instead of that, you shun your team and start to go, well, the rest of my team just stinks, right? And I'm gonna do well to practice and be my best because it's really about me. In the end, it's about me and how I perform. But it's really not, right? Because if you win and the team loses, right? Same thing in an organization. And I'm not just singling out leaders. This applies to everyone, anywhere in the organization. Heck, this applies in culture too. You see where people go through certain traumas, and instead of going to the heart of the matter, what do? They double down on, dumb, right? And they just get worse. They go further down the rabbit hole. They spiral down the rabbit hole. But they think by doing these things, hurting other people, raising the rates, skyrocket. That's the other reflex action to poor performance. Oh, I'm not charging enough. Now, there are instances where you may not be charging enough. And strategic, evaluating your pricing system is also needs to be strategic and careful process. But that isn't a sweeping increase in pricing by 30%. Why? Because my team's not as effective as they could be. Why? Because I'm not addressing the whys, and I'm not diving into the heart of the matter to build the team cohesion because I don't want to invest the time to cultivate my team and to coach them up. I just want to get the end result. And I don't really care if the customer has to pay, 3 or 4 times more for the product and the service, as long as I get what I want out of this situation. And my team be damned, basically, is the attitude. And this isn't, don't want to paint with a broad brush. These situations are going to apply independently depending on who an individual is on the team or who the leaders are as part of the organization or ownership for that matter, right? And what typically happens the further you are from a process. So if you're a CEO with, dozens of sites, but you have barely touched or visited them and so forth and so on, very difficult to make sweeping assumptions without seeing things with your own eyes. And then when you go see things with your own eyes, the stark reality hits you like a pie in the face, right? And so then you immediately figure out what's going on. Where was the mistake made? It wasn't that you didn't go to the site, it's that you didn't get site leaders and support staff there that were that were not only handling these things and coaching the team and mentoring them up and building that culture and that team cohesion, but they were also telling you what you wanted to hear, not being truthful, right? So again, this is another scenario. People go through difficult times and situations, and what do? They become an I, me person, and now they start being secretive and doing these, kind of subtle, sly things behind the scenes, outside the light of day. Deals done in the dark kind of a thing. And what happens is the team suffers, right? Team suffers, culture suffers, families suffer, culture suffers. And why does it suffer? Because individuals were looking out for their best interests. They were not looking out for the team, right? So the loyalty isn't just the team members, right? It is also the leaders. It is also the figureheads, right? It is also those who are liaison the most with customers and so on and so forth. Everybody is accountable. But this doubling down on brokenness, right, to achieve success, that is not success. You might improve your KPIs to some degree, but they won't be sustainable. That I guarantee you. It's the same way with relationships, whether they be in the broader culture. It could be, part of the civic groups, organizations, religious groups you're a part of. All these things, along with families, friends, all this sort of thing. If you are subverting people in your life to find success, that is not success, right? That whole I remember they would kind of say this, and I thought it was more of a joke than anything, but there are people who actually believe this. If you're not cheating, you're not winning, right? If you're not cutting a corner, you're not winning. Well, that's a terrible philosophy. It's a funny joke, but if you're actually doing that, you're probably being scrutinized by a lot of governing bodies, not to mention, regulatory institutions too, right? Why is that? Because you're probably cutting corners, right? You're cutting corners to such a degree for the I, me, you've doubled down, quadrupled down, right? So much so that you've ostracized your team. And if you have a very small or no team, you've ostracized others in your life. It's the same idea. It's the trade-off. Like, I'm going to be more successful, so my home life will be completely out of balance, right? That's not winning. That's not a success. You're not successful when you do that. The organization has become more successful. They might have found a few ticks forward and upward in their progress and in their performance. But if your life's out of balance, guess what? You're not going to be able to sustain that because you're eventually going to drop off. And you see this, and this is oftentimes, not all the time, can't generalize too much, but it does happen. You see it where site leaders, for example, will come and go every year or two. Well, some of that is choice, but a lot of that is they can't sustain it. They basically are trading off one thing for another. And that's part of the problem, the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter was having a balanced scorecard, right? And if you don't have a balanced scorecard, you will not be able to sustain and maintain and sustain and build upon that success. That being said, this could happen with any relations in your life as well, right? If you're trading one off for another, all my kids are grown and all that sort of thing. But if I trade off never, you know, improving and growing and, cultivating, you got to think of life like being a gardener. If you're not involved and engaged intentionally, then those relationships can die. And you don't want that to occur, right? But some people don't care. They will let personal relationships and all these things fade into the background so that they become so materialistic and so, build my empire, right? Hey, fine, build your empire. But just be aware, you'll be, you'll be celebrating alone, right? And being alone is not, there's nothing evil about being alone. But to destroy relationships for success, to trade off and to double down on that, and to play a game, right? Because maybe there's jealousy, maybe there's competitiveness that has just run rampant. This is the negative side of competition. Now, I believe that the negative side of competition is selfishness, right? So if you have multiple sites, and we'll say site leaders at multiple sites, and the competition has gotten to such a degree that suppliers, there may be a supplier function within those, right? That now people are subverting each other's performance. Now they're not being supportive, right? This is kind of back to the relay race, right? Again, it could be a scenario where people essentially are not supportive, are not helping out their team. They're not coaching, guiding, mentoring, inspiring them, doing all the things, right? They're not doing this. Instead, it has gotten out of control so that competition isn't healthy. Now it's become unhealthy, right? So you don't want to trade off brokenness, right? Trade for brokenness, trade your success for brokenness, and understand that sometimes when you're trying to be successful, you may actually be creating brokenness and furthering the wedge that you drive between your professional and personal relationships, in and around all your, groups that you're a part of outside of work, all of these things. Why is that? Because if you don't have balance, you're going to have a warble, right? And that warble is going to affect you. And this can affect a human being, a person, right? So each person has to make this decision. But leaders also have to have these open conversations with your team, because if they aren't aware of a lot of these things, then they're never really going to look at themselves and go, oh, okay, yeah, it's really just creating awareness, seeing things through the appropriate lens. It would be like getting up in the morning and, you could just walk out the door, but what do? You brush your teeth, do all the things, you comb your hair, right? Typically, and there's your bulb, hey, that's a step you don't have to worry about. But you comb your hair, right? Comb your hair, all right, you spend a couple minutes getting all that right, good, out the door. You've made sure that what is the reflection in the mirror reflects you, right? Who you are, the you that you are, right? But you make sure that reflects. And it's the same way. Inside, what's inside comes out on the outside, right? And so above and below, same thing, right? There's a mirroring effect that should be ongoing, right? You wouldn't trade your eternal future for success here, would you? Right? You wouldn't. Where's your treasure lie? Right? Are you the treasure? Is it the good and the love within you? Right? Don't create a brokenness for success. Don't break yourself and break your relationships to achieve what the external world sees as a success. Build your resume, do all the things, check the boxes, get wins, no doubt about it, right? And then that is, your professional resume. But don't trade being a good person, and don't allow yourself to fall into a broken state to achieve that. That trade-off is never going to be satisfying. You will be unsatisfied, and any success you do get will be limited, short-lived, and it'll peter out. So what are we saying today? We're really saying is don't double down on your brokenness to achieve a success, because that is not success, right? All right, just a short one today. Well, tried to be. Just a short one today. Folks, hope you got a little bit out of that. Remember, hit that good green domino 3 to 5 times a day to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage folks. And when we do this, not only are we helping to, cultivate and grow culture, right, and build healthy relationships and make sure we don't double down on brokenness, right, for success, but we're also helping in our own lives, right, to create that within ourselves. And then doing that, we can coach, lead, mentor, and uplift others, right? And that's super special if you have the opportunity to do that. You should never take the leadership role lightly. All right, folks. Hope you have a great day. Remember, hit like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.